evening, the former king of good times, Vijay Mallya, was arrested by Scotland Yard and later released on bail. Remember, India had given a formal extradition request for Mallya under the extradition treaty between India and the UK on the 8th of February. Scotland Yard confirming in its statement, which read that the arrest was on behalf of Indian authorities in relation to accusations of fraud. So it is a criminal complaint filed by the Indian authorities. It's a criminal complaint filed by the CBI. It is not a civil matter. Mallya, meanwhile, has tweeted and tried to downplay the proceedings. His tweet read, and I quote, "Usual Indian media hype. Extradition hearing in court started today as expected," end of quote. To discuss the developments in detail now, we're joined by Ramesh, Vaidyanathan, the managing partner of Advaya Legal, and senior criminal lawyer Satish Maneshinde. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us. Mr. Maneshinde, let me start by asking you to respond to the comments that have come in from Vijay Mallya. As I mentioned, he's tweeted, and I quote, "Usual Indian media hype. Extradition hearing in court has started today," end of quote. We learned, Mr. Maneshinde, that Vijay Mallya has been granted conditional bail pending the bail deposit of £650,000. Given where things stand today, what do you make of this arrest and where this leaves the story?
Well, first of all, it was a predicted order that he would be granted bail, and I think when I spoke to the CNBC earlier, I had said that it's a matter of procedure and formality that he has been arrested and he'll be released on bail immediately, because the English courts do not believe in keeping such accused in custody merely because there is so much of hype in the media in India.
So you're saying that granting of bail in this matter is a routine procedure, but where does this leave the extradition process itself? The Indian authorities believe that they have a strong case, but given our past history with the UK on extradition, where do you see this headed?
See, first of all, I must say that the prosecution here that makes it out to be a big case may not meet the requirements of the English courts. The rules of procedure and admission of evidence in English courts is much higher than what it is practiced here in India. Secondly, Mallya has said that none of his monies were diverted to any personal accounts of his, and all the monies which were granted to him by the banks were utilized by the company and not by him for legitimate purposes, and therefore none of those monies have been diverted to his personal accounts. Secondly, all these transactions which have taken place.
But that's the claim that Vijay Mallya is making, Mr. Maneshinde. But of course, the Indian authorities claim that he has siphoned money out of the country for personal use.
I'm going by the claims of the rival parties because I'm neither holding a brief for either of them. I'm an independent lawyer, and I have seen these happening in all over the country. And the CBI has said that he cheated the government or the banks in releasing these funds. First of all these transactions have taken place during the year 2006 to 2009, and all the accounts on which these monies were diverted to were of monies which were granted to Kingfisher and not to Mr. Mallya personally. Thirdly, all the banks which gave monies to Vijay Mallya were convinced that the securities which he had offered at the time of grant of loan were fully secure, and they were capable of being encashed at any time. Even the banks gave a loan against his trademark of Kingfisher to the tunes of 4,000 crores. So if the banks were convinced that at the time when the loan was given, and none of the bank managers or the officers or the chairman are accused of having conspired with fraudulently of giving those loans, I fail to understand how a cheating case could be made out. And in any case, I don't know the procedure that the banks have taken to lift the mortgages and encash the securities. Without all that happening, the banks have gone and made this case that they were cheated. There was a conspiracy which I don't believe would stand the test of scrutiny of law in the UK.
Yeah, Mr. Maneshinde, on the last point that you've made there, on the case being built around fraudulent dealings involving banks. Now, we've recently seen arrests being made of former IDBI bank officials who were involved with this particular loan, the giving out of this particular loan to Vijay Mallyas Kingfisher Airlines. I don't know if that will have any bearing on this case at all, but what do you think? Will this be taken cognizance of by the UK authorities, the arrests that have been made of former bank officials?
Mere arrest of these bank officers is not going to bear any fruits in the extradition proceedings in England, because the extradition proceedings in England that are likely to take place before the magistratal court in Westminster are going to be governed by the rules of English law and procedure. And we have seen in a number of cases that the Indian government has failed in getting extradition treaties and proceedings to a logical end and getting the people back from England or the US in the last couple of years. So I don't see how, in a matter of this nature, where it's a totally civil transaction, where Mallya had even said that he was offering 6,900 crores to the bank to settle, compared to 7,000 crores of rupees, which were the principal amount, which works out to almost 99% of the loan amount which is granted to him. And banks have readily and even now settled for 50% of the value of the principal loan amount. I don't know, first of all, why the banks did not settle during that time. He even offered that 2,500 crores were lying in the Karnataka High Court and securities worth 3,000 crores were available, and he was offering other monies in the form of assets which he was in possession of personally to settle the bank claim. So therefore, in such circumstances, I don't see how any English court will say that he was a willful defaulter or that he has cheated the Indian banks or run away from the country, because when he left the country, he left when there was no order against him not to leave the country, and even the lookout notice was issued by the CBI, mind you, was withdrawn by this present government. It's only after that that he left the country.
You are right on that point. He did travel on an Indian passport, which later was cancelled. But Ramesh, you heard what Satish Maneshinde has to say. You've seen what Vijay Mallya has tweeted. In fact, the next hearing as part of this extradition process, which is underway, is on the 17th of May. So it's unlikely that at least over the next month or so that we're going to see Vijay Mallya being brought back to India, as was the claim that was being made by the Council of the Enforcement Directorate. But how do you see this piecing together?
I probably won't be, as, shall I say, as pessimistic as probably the earlier speaker. I feel it's an important first step. There is definitely, there are of course many further steps to be taken. There's no need for the government to thump its chest saying that, we've done what others have not done yet. But I think it's important to realize that for the first time, we've made out a prima facie case for extradition. Now, back in April 2016, we made an amateurish attempt to get the extradition process started, which failed miserably. We now have a slightly different scenario. See, here we are not talking about a default by a borrower on its borrowing or a default by a guarantor who stood guarantee for those loans. Now, what the government has now gone to the UK authorities with is a charge of money laundering, fraud. These are all extraditable offences under the India-UK treaty. Therefore, I will probably be not be so dismissive of the government's efforts here. And I think as far as Malya's reaction is concerned, I think it's a bit of a bravado to say that it's a usual media hype.
Yes.
So I'm not going to be. I think the way I see it, it's a first step in a long series of steps that we need to take.
What would be the next series of steps, Ramesh? And as you pointed out, it would perhaps be wrong for the Indian government to get into celebratory mood here with the extradition process being started with this arrest and then the conditional bail being given to Vijay Mallya. But the next date of hearing, as I pointed out, is the 17th of May. So, how do you see this playing out?
See, this is a long process, as I mentioned. So first is the hearing before the magistrate court, which will then, assuming, for example, example, that the Indian government is able to convince the magistrate, the matter will be referred to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State will hold his own hearing, a second hearing, where he'll also have to be satisfied that there is a case for extradition. Assuming, for example, the government of India wins that round as well, he will have a chance to go to the High Court. So I think we're looking at, in my view, something like 18 to 24 months before we get to a final decision process. I think so. Because he will, see, Mr. Mallya has the resources to take it to its logical conclusion. So he's going to exhaust all possible legal remedies available to him. So I will not be surprised if he hires the best legal brains to try and drag this out as much as possible. But I think ultimately the question would be, what is the kind of evidence that's put out before the authorities? Now, CBI has filed a 1,000-page charge sheet in India. Now, to what extent will those charges hold good? Have they completed the circle of payments? Have they been able to make out a foolproof case? All this will be tested in a court of law in the UK. So let's wait and watch.
Let's wait and watch. Mr. Maneshinde, you want to comment on that? The possibility of Vijay Mallya returning, 18 to 24 months is what Ramesh is saying. The narrative, if one listens to the reactions coming in from the government, seem to suggest that, it's imminent.
Well, the procedure that is followed in the English courts is that when Mallya is arrested and brought before the court, he has now been granted bail. Some of the media agencies were saying that the procedure will complete in a month's time, which I said that it is not possible. That has been proved by the fact that the court has fixed the next hearing on the 17th of May, on which day Mallya would need to be furnished with all the papers that the Indian government has sent as a request towards extradition. And thereafter, a full-fledged trial will take place in the English courts. And the matter has been fixed during the summer of 2017. I am sure that extradition proceedings in England, according to the calendar that I have verified from the English courts, it will take a couple of summers before the proceedings end in the trial court.
So long-drawn process. But Ramesh, let me end then by asking you, you said that you wouldn't be as dismissive as Satish Maneshinde was about the case that's being built by the Indian authorities. But to really make the criminal complaint of conspiracy, fraud stick, they will have to undoubtedly prove the money trail, will they not?
Absolutely, absolutely. See, the fact that certain IDBI officials have been arrested, or the fact that several arrest warrants are pending in respect of various offences in different courts, is not the criteria. The criteria really is there a foolproof case where this is something which can lead to a conviction? We are not suggesting that the trial in the UK will actually have to be similar to a trial if it were to be held in India. Doesn't mean it has to go through a whole process of evidence and complete, hearing and, conclusion. What the court will have to be satisfied if this is something which could eventually lead to conviction. That's one test. The other test would be that it's not hit by some of the exclusions. So Mallya would come and plead that he won't get a fair trial. He would say that this is all political vendetta. And human rights issues may be raised. So all these exclusions will also have to be eliminated before you actually look at an extradition. So I think it's going to be an interesting period. And it will also be a test of our own prosecution capabilities in a sensitive matter like this. And the whole credibility of the banking system is at stake.
Well, you're absolutely right on that front. In fact, senior government officials saying that there will be two options that the UK authorities will consider. One, of course, is deportation, and the other is extradition, as we were discussing. The process to formally get Mallya extradited to India has started, and it could take, as Ramesh was pointing out, anywhere between 18 to 24 months. Of course, the narrative coming in from the government is that it could be imminent. But let's listen in to the Minister of Finance. Minister of State for Finance, Sapna Das, caught up with Santosh Gangwar. Here's what he had to say on the arrest and Mallya's return.
What is the next step so that we are looking at?
ये प्रक्रिया का हिस्सा है. बेल पर जाना, वहाँ के अदालत ने उचित समझा कि बेल पर भेजेंगे, पर अगला कदम हम कानून के हिसाब से कदम उठाएंगे. इसका खुलासा करना कोई आवश्यक नहीं है.
So, but does it really mean that we will pursue the case there and then we'll try and bring him back to India?
ये हमारा लक्ष्य है कि हम इसको परसू करेंगे और वो हमारे देश में आए, ये हम इसके साथ जुड़े हुए हैं.
Sir, one more quick question here, but will it be possible to pursue that under the current extradition treaty?
ना, अब हम देखते हैं कि ये कैसे संभव है, उसके हिसाब से बात कर रहे हैं.
Sir, one more question. Sir, 7,000 crores worth of loans still pending in terms of SBI and the big lenders. Some payment is already done. What do we now look? I mean, how do you look at that situation?
हम इस पर कोई टिप्पणी नहीं कर सकते. लोन हम लोगों ने नहीं दिया था.
Well, that is the Minister of State for Finance, Santosh Gangwar. But to take this conversation further, we're now joined by Subramanian Swamy, MP for the Bharatiya Janata Party from the Rajya Sabha. Mr. Swamy, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. The government sees this as a big victory. The fact that Vijay Mallya was arrested, of course, he's subsequently been given bail by the UK authorities. But how do you see this playing out? Because we've been speaking with legal experts who believe that given the fact that the extradition process has only started now, this could take anywhere between 18 to 24 months to come to any kind of conclusion.
Well, first of all, the extradition treaty that Britain has is very similar to the one that we have. And it depends on the nature of the case. In most of the time, the extradition proceedings take place for people who are criminals or committed some crime, like murder or etc., where there is a lot of non-paper proof. There are witnesses to be examined and so on. So in that sense, the courts will examine whether there's some kind of prima facie case before they send him out. And in this case, everything is in black and white. There's undeniable. It's also that he's not a British national who we are seeking to extradite. It's an Indian national. He has run away from there. He was a member of parliament. So all these circumstances put together, I would doubt whether this.
But Mr. Swamy, just if I could just take forward the points that you were making on why he should be extradited. When he travelled out of India, sir, he travelled on a valid Indian passport. It was only subsequently that his passport was revoked or cancelled by the Indian government. Even as far as the allegations of siphoning of funds are concerned, that is the claim that's being made by CBI, which is being vociferously denied by Vijay Mallya. Of course, all of that will have to be proven in a court of law. So do you really believe that it's an open shut case as far as extradition goes?
Well, you're not making a distinction between prima facie case and what is to be proven in the court of law. At the moment, the only thing that the British court should look is not conclusive proof that he is bound to be convicted. They have to look to see whether he has committed a crime prima facie. And that is obvious because everything is black and white. This is not a case where witnesses are involved, there is somebody who saw somebody, none of that kind of thing. So here it should not take more than 3 to 4 months to get him to be extradited to India. As far as bail is concerned, that is normal. He is not going to run away from England because he has some running to England. And I think the general rule the courts usually practice is that unless some heinous crime is committed where you committed 7-8 murders at this or that stretch, bail is the rule and jail is the exception.
Mr. Swamy, should he be extradited to India? And you believe that that is likely to be the case and it could happen even over the next few months. What then, sir? Senior government officials saying that this should not be a matter that is politicized. Several other experts that we've been speaking to suggest that, like in the past, where Vijay Mallya made an offer to settle with banks, that option should be exercised and finally let this matter come to a close. What do you believe should be the way forward? Should he be extradited to India?
Well, if he's extradited to India, no, there's no question of politicization because there's nothing politics about Mr. Mallya. He's been straddling all sides of the fence. And I don't think there's any political party particularly against him. In fact, there's an accusation of the Congress that our party let him escape, or rather, one of our ministers, the finance minister, let him escape. I don't think there is any question of politicization here. What I would expect certainly is that the money should be recovered. That should be the first part. And then if there is a fraud of 420, then of course he should be prosecuted and sent to jail.
But you do believe that the option of trying to settle with banks is an option that should be taken forward?
No, not settle. If he has committed a crime, he has to be prosecuted and sent to jail. But the question is, sending to jail is not enough. We must find ways and means to see that the money that he took away, 9,000 crores or so, is returned.
Right. All right, Mr. Swamy, thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. That's the MP, BJP MP from the Rajya Sabha, Subramanian Swamy, there commenting on